In order to address some of the questions brought up by certain media regarding Shen Yun and the founder of Falun Gong, Mr. Li Hongzhi's finances, a Sound of Hope radio reporter was able to interview Mr. Li. At the same time, we couldn't help but be curious. With Mr. Li having been a renowned Qigong master in China for several decades, then later becoming the founder of the Falun Dafa school of spiritual practice, as he walked this path, how did he manage his personal life? We expressed our curiosity about this to Mr. Li, and he very generously told us his story. In 1992, at a meeting of Qigong practitioners in the city of Changchun in Jilin province, was the first time that Mr. Li Hongzhi presented his views on Qigong, commenting on what people at the meeting were discussing. He had only said a few sentences, and yet everyone was dumbfounded. Wow, who are you? How could you come out with such knowledge? And thus, a few veteran Qigong enthusiasts made a suggestion. You should hold a Qigong class. They helped organize a venue, and thus Mr. Li's first Qigong class was held at the No. 5 middle school in Changchun. At that time, Qigong classes were also called talks to demonstrate the healing effects of Qigong. Basically, it was a class for healing illness. That day, many sick people came to the venue. Amongst them were people groaning in pain and even people attached to IVs. They had been encouraged to come by the group of Qigong enthusiasts. Mr. Li said, I went over there and sorted them out one by one. Very quickly, within the space of a few seconds, they all stood up, even including those who really couldn't stand up or those with partial paralysis. Mr. Li said, now you can walk, and the patients started to walk. Then Mr. Li said, now you can run, and miraculously, these people really could run. Everyone was stunned, saying, what is going on here? Once news of the class at the No. 5 middle school in Changchun spread, it wasn't possible to stop. Mr. Li received invitations from all over, inviting him to come and teach Qigong. And this was the start of his own Qigong system, Falun Gong. People started respectfully referring to him as Master Li. And it was at this time that someone gave Master Li a piece of advice. Go to the China National Qigong Association to be certified. After that, it will be easy to go to teach Qigong anywhere. Mr. Li thus went to the National China Qigong Association in Beijing. As soon as they saw him, they were surprised, saying, we haven't seen a Qigong master so young before. But okay, let's do some evaluation. Their evaluation was to have him again use Qigong for healing. They looked for people that other Qigong had failed to heal, such as those with chronic or incurable illnesses, and had them come. As soon as Mr. Li released the energy, many people's symptoms got better or were completely cured. The whole place was seething with excitement. But what was more incredible was that this 40-year-old Qigong master, in teaching his classes, had explained clearly many Qigong principles that these Qigong enthusiasts had wanted to understand but could not figure out. After the Qigong healing class, the China Qigong Association sat down with Mr. Li. They said, please don't go. Stay in Beijing under our banner, and you can travel the whole country and teach classes. At that time, the China Qigong Association was acknowledged and supported by the government. It was affiliated with the National Sports Committee and overseen by General Zhang Zhenghuan at the request of the director of the Sports Committee, Wu Shaozu. The Qigong Association also had the support of another influential official, Mr. Qian Xuesen. At that time, in the 90s, it was very fashionable to study Qigong. It was referred to as fringe science. Thus, Mr. Li Hongzhi started his work of spreading his own Qigong system, Falun Gong. The conditions at the time were very hard. This was because it was Mr. Li's wish to teach Falun Gong as widely as possible, so he would not accept a lot of money for tuition. For a 9-day class, each person only paid a bit over 20 renminbi, which in US dollars is $3.30. This was used for travel expenses, meals, and to print materials for the class. So after a class was over, there wasn't much profit at all. At that time, when Mr. Li and his students were traveling to teach Falun Gong, they would take trains and couldn't afford a sleeper car. Thus, most of the time they were in regular seats, carrying those types of bags that traveling workers often carry in China. Inside the bags were introductory pamphlets to Qigong, and there was always a load of instant noodles. Normally, that was all they ate. or occasionally perhaps they would get a little treat in the form of a bowl of noodles from a street vendor instead of the instant variety. In 2 years, Mr. Li held 54 sets of Falun Gong classes with an average length of 9 days. Staff members were utterly sick of instant noodles. At the time, Mr. Li said to the staff members and students with him, "To follow me is to eat bitterness," or in other words, to suffer. Later, Mr. Li had people transcribe parts of the lectures, and it was edited into a book, China Falun Gong. But Mr. Li had no money to release a book. Later on, he met someone willing to help. He put up 5,000 renminbi, and the book was published. Once money started flowing in from book sales, the first thing Mr. Li did was return the 5,000 renminbi loan. And from then on, things got a bit better. The main book of Falun Gong, which is called Zhuan Falun, was published. Then after that, because of the fact that some students with good financial situations had started practicing, they were able to help Mr. Li publish books and travel to different places to teach Falun Gong. Things were finally improving. In the 4 years from 1992 to 1996, because of the miraculous healing effects of Falun Gong and its low fees, and then also the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance that Mr. Li taught, it resonated strongly with people, rapidly spreading across the whole of China. More and more people were taking up the practice until they were countless in number. At that time, on Chang'an Road in Beijing, people would all line up in a long line to practice Falun Gong exercises in the morning. In the one-party state that is China, this naturally aroused suspicion from the highest levels of government. Mr. Li Hongzhi said, "At the time, they wanted to target me, but it wasn't easy. They first discovered he had no money. Second, he wasn't a womanizer. Third, he didn't even own any real estate. Mr. Li was already famous across all of China, but unlike those other Qigong masters with crowds following them who were earning a lot of money, Mr. Li was still living in his brother's house next to the military museum in Beijing. So it wasn't easy to find anything about him to expose. But in the end, the authorities still laid their cards down on the table. One day in 1996, a director from the Department of Commerce arranged a lunch meeting with Mr. Li. Mr. Li thought it would just be a normal meeting, such as a Qigong healing session over lunch, so he went. But after he sat down, the director told him, "Your influence in China is too great. You have to leave China." That is why Master Li went overseas. It was for the safety of practitioners of Falun Gong in China. All he could do was think of a way to leave the country. Because of his level of fame and all the honors he had received, it was easy for him to get an immigrant visa to the United States. His application was quickly approved. And in 1998, Mr. Li, with his wife and daughter, left China for the US. First he arrived in California, but there didn't seem to be conditions for him to settle there. So he went to look at houses around Atlanta, Georgia. There was a 2-story house for $120,000 US, but Mr. Li had nowhere near enough money to buy a house. And the house was near a busy road with the sound of traffic, and thus Mr. Li left Atlanta and came to New York. After arriving in New York, Mr. Li, his wife, and his daughter stayed in an apartment offered to them by a student. Later, the building that this apartment was in was photographed by Chinese spies. They said it was Li Hongzhi's building in propaganda in China. Later on, they moved to Flushing, staying in a house that a practitioner had bought. It was a simple townhouse. Because it wasn't a peaceful environment in Flushing, Mr. Li's family then moved to a single-family home in New Jersey. This was also purchased by a practitioner for Master Li to use. This house was a bit bigger. It was 3,000 square feet, although by US standards, that is still a moderately sized middle-class home. But this house was also photographed by Chinese spies, and then publicized in China as Li Hongzhi's mansion. Later on, after the persecution of Falun Gong in China got severe, things got more and more dangerous. Mr. Li arranged for his family to leave this house and go to another temporary accommodation provided by a practitioner. After this was all settled, Mr. Li alone hit the road, traveling across the US, giving Chinese communist agents no way to find him. This lifestyle of no fixed abode lasted for almost a year. Then in the year 2000, practitioners in upstate New York, in an area 2 hours from Manhattan by car, bought a piece of land. This is the property where Dragon Springs Temple is located today. Apart from one small cabin on the property, It was a piece of completely wild land. Mr. Li Hongzhi thus came to live in the cabin on the property, and together with some practitioners, started some construction on the land. At the beginning, nobody had any money. So the only money came from practitioners who took part. If you lacked a certain tool, you would go buy it yourself. A lot of work was done by hand. Little by little, they started to develop the property. And this became several years of voluntary labor. Until a few years after Shenyun, the arts troupe that Mr. Li established started to tour. Now there was income coming in, and the situation started to change for the better. Many disciples, out of respect, sent tea leaves to Master Li, and thus Dragon Springs Temple opened a tea house, and used these tea leaves to serve everyone. They also provided snacks. Originally, people suggested to charge for the tea and snacks, but Mr. Li still told the tea house not to accept any money. Why was this? Well, one reason is that a lot of people who came to drink tea were all volunteer workers at Dragon Springs. They were living tough lives anyway. How could we accept their money? Later, practitioners outside Dragon Springs gifted Master more snacks, and Master Li would deliver them all to the tea house, or share them with others. We interviewed one practitioner who has been working with Master Li for 20 years, asking him about his impression of Master Li. He said that Master Li's life is very simple. He gets up very early and sleeps very late. What is more, he does everything himself, including washing his own clothes. He often washes them by hand in the morning. After washing them, he hangs them to dry. No matter whether it is Dragon Springs Temple or outside on tour with Shenyun Performing Arts, he is always the same. Although Master's appreciation of art is very sophisticated, however, the clothing he wears himself is very simple. Often he would wear the same dress shirt and a pair of jeans for a long time. Looking back at mankind's history, no matter whether it is in the East or West, which person spreading a spiritual teaching did not accept gifts and offerings from students? You see, the value of offerings is not their material value, but it lies in how sincere one is in their heart and their righteous belief. Master Li never required his disciples to make any offerings, instead only requiring them to cultivate a heart of goodness. Master Li originally should have had a more comfortable life, and it wouldn't really have been that hard for him. But Master Li has lofty ambitions. Why does Master Li teach his spiritual discipline? Why does he painstakingly lead disciples in cultivation? Why work voluntarily for Falun Dafa projects? Amongst his true disciples, it would be hard to find one that doesn't understand. Today, even many people who don't practice spiritual cultivation also know the answer. Falun Dafa is completely different to other Qigong practices. It's not about healing illness. It's not for making money. It's not a practice where you wear the monk's robe during the day and then at night go home to a regular life. It is true cultivation of Buddhist principles, teaching people truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, returning to one's true self. The persecution of Falun Gong has now lasted for over a quarter of a century, but truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance is still standing tall, illuminating the hearts of those who cultivate, solidifying the righteous thoughts of believers. The firm resolve of Falun Gong practitioners comes from their belief in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. It comes from their inborn quality, and it comes from the example Master Li himself has set in his words and actions. Buddha Sakyamuni, when he was guiding disciples in cultivation, once had a disciple ask, "Respected Master, would it be possible for us to lead regular lives and cultivate spiritually while living in human society?" Sakyamuni replied, "For that you need to wait until the day the Holy King who turns the wheel descends to the world." He paused. Then Sakyamuni continued, saying, "The power of this Holy King who turns the wheel is incredibly mighty. When the time comes, don't miss the opportunity that comes once in millions of years." In the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West, it says, "It's hard to obtain a human body. It's hard to be born in China. It's hard to encounter the righteous teaching. One who has all three is truly blessed." We want to give good wishes to every person who is watching this video. We hope you will calm your hearts, don't bring in any prejudice, and read through in full one time the book Lehren von Falun. You will definitely get results that you wouldn't have expected, because this is no coincidence. All predestined opportunities are bestowed by heaven above. treasure it. Seize the opportunity to learn the truth and have a bright future. That is it for today. We will be here every week, continuing to share all I know and think about the world. 晨曦小屋, filling your life with sunshine and wisdom. If you like the video, please subscribe. We will see you next time.